We have arrived. This is Webb Parton, your host, and we welcome you to the Free Range Dogs podcast. This is a place where we stake out a shady spot and talk about all things dog. Find yourself a soft piece of grass, spin a few circles, plop down, rest your feet, and join us in this joyful conversation. Hi, this is Webb Parton today with Free Range Dogs podcast, and we've got a great person to talk with. I want to introduce you to Mike Parmley. Mike, give the folks an introduction.
Mike Parmley. I'm one of the owners of Barley's Canine Recreation Center, just a dog recreation center here in Salt Lake City, where we do daycare, and we have a big swimming pool to swim dogs in.
And, you know, that's the thing I want to talk about is that it's, God, what a fascinating job, because what you do is you swim dogs. Folks bring them in. You got an indoor pool, and you got to have some stories.
A couple.
Yeah. You know, I know when I was doing gun dog work, I mean, it'd be a cow tank, you know, with cow flop floating along the surface. It looked a lot nicer in the pool.
Yeah.
But you've got a large indoor pool, elevated, run around it, and then you got a ramp going down into it. Mm-hmm. And that is in conjunction with a daycare kind of center where folks will bring your dogs in for the day, but they'll have the option to get in that pool. And you have specifically dogs come in for just swimming? Yeah,
both. So we swim anywhere from 8 to 15 dogs a day from daycare. And then we also do a number of, first-time swims, assisted swims, and then once the dogs get it all figured out, the owners can bring their dogs in, swim them on their own. And, you know, that's how people exercise their dogs for the day and that type of thing. So.
And I know that some dogs don't necessarily like to swim.
Yes. You know, I always like to tell people it's like skiing. You know, some people pick it up and they love it. And some people try it out and it's just not their thing. What we've seen with a lot of dogs is they just don't know they can do it. So once we show them they can do it and, they start figuring out that they're not going to die in there, then it starts to be pretty fun for most of them.
And what is that process like? You have to lure them in the water? You use other dogs to bring them in? What?
A little bit of both. Yeah, we start out, I like to do it in groups because then, you know, the dogs that are starting out, they get to see the other dogs doing it and say, oh, okay, that's what I should be doing type of thing. And, you know, dogs are like people. They're all different. We get some dogs that, I had a 4-month-old lab come in, never been in the pool before, ran up the ramp to the deck, ran down the ramp to get into the pool, and I couldn't pull the dog out of the pool. You know, so there's that end of it. And then there's dogs I've worked with for 8 or 9 hours before they wanted to get in there. So, you know, some dogs are toy motivated, so that helps. Other dogs are motivated by their owners. So we'll, you know, maybe put the owners on the other side of the pool and kind of coax them in that way. But we do put a life vest on them. We bring them in the pool, you know, pull them in with the handle. And again, like a lot of dogs are very reluctant on getting in there. And sometimes like I say, it takes 15 minutes. Other times it takes 9 hours. But we have pretty good luck with most dogs coming around to it. So.
And you find that, are there any particular, certainly there are breeds that love water, mm-hmm. like Labs or Chessies or Goldens or.
Sure. Okay.
But are there some breeds that you just can't seem to get an interest in them?
There are a few breeds, one being the Great Danes. We have a little tough, a little bit of a tough time with them. And the other one's the Arctic breeds, like a lot of the Huskies and Malamutes and dogs like that. And, you know, that's not to say we haven't had some that love it, but for the most part, they're tough ones to get in there. Especially, you know, the size of the Great Danes. If they don't want to go, it's kind of tough to get them in there.
You know, that must be quite a sight to see a Great Dane swimming.
Yeah, it is. And like I say, we have a couple that like it, and it's great to see. The big surprise to me, I'd say two big surprises. One is the pit bulls. The pit bulls, they tend to start out scared about the whole thing. And then once they realize they can do it and they're not going to drown, it's like their favorite thing in the world. The other one is the English bulldogs. You wouldn't expect them.
Boy, I wouldn't think that.
No.
Yeah. You wouldn't think their body would have the float in it to keep them up.
And it really doesn't for the most part. But with a life vest on, I mean, we have a couple of dogs that come in there that they're just screaming to get into the pool when they show up. They just love it so much. Yeah, it's really interesting to see.
That does sound like fun.
But I would say the like you say, golden retrievers, the labs, they're probably the two, most popular dogs coming our place and swimming in our pool. So,
yeah, I know, because I've been at your place and watched them. Just, you get a group of dogs running around that pool and splashing, and
oh yeah,
it's just contagious, the fun they have.
Yeah.
Now, your process. When you get a new dog in, do you have to make an introduction? Do you test them first to see just how water drawn they are?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We have like a ramp going down into the pool, so it's a very casual thing. And if they're toy motivated, we'll just start by throwing the toy up on the deck. Okay, you're into that. Okay, now let's start introducing the ramp. The ramp's a little scary for the dogs, so we might have to like show them that they can walk on it. They're not gonna fall in from there, so they can get on the ramp, and we'll start throwing the toy a little deeper. And, then some dogs will just get in on their own and go after the toy. Other dogs, we just have to kind of use the handle on the life vest, and we'll give them a little, help in there. And, again, from there, it's some dogs are just like, oh, this is great. I love this. Other dogs, they're just splashing around. They don't know what to do. So yeah, it's a little bit of work just getting them used to it. So you could bring 40 dogs in there and you'd have to treat all 40 dogs a different way. So yeah, it's what makes the job fun, I guess, is just every day is a new thing, so yeah.
Yeah, I had a short hair years ago that come in for training, and he'd get in that water. It's like his butt was weighted down. So it's like he was just,
stuck straight up and down.
Yeah, straight up there, and he'd just splash and splash. And God, I had to take him to a lake and go swimming with him, throwing birds to get him to. But once he figured out if he had momentum and he could propel himself, he would level out.
Yeah, and there's definitely dog breeds that's a trait of theirs. It seems to be a poodle trait. So, these days we get a lot of doodles coming in, and I just let the people know, like, your dog's butt is going to drop down and they're going to be swimming kind of vertical in the pool, and they'll eventually come around, and they typically have a different swim style, like, a lab that is real streamlined with the pool. Their paws are underneath of them and they're swimming along. And those, the poodles and the doodles, they tend to get this, more of a sideways motion going with their paws rather than, underneath of them. And they just pick up that different swim style. I see some golden retrievers doing that as well. My Spinoni does that. I don't know enough about gun dogs, but I see that out of a lot of the gun dogs. And my theory was just, maybe that's like their head's a little higher out of the pool and they can see a little bit further when they're swimming when their butt is down like that. So I don't know. The Portuguese water dogs, kind of same thing. So people get worried. They see their dog swimming real vertical in the pool, but it's like, they'll get it figured out.
Well, that is a fun gig. Now you incorporate that in with the daycare center. So you're working with groups of dogs, and we spoke the other day with an off-leash dog walker, the same sort of a thing with, using a group of dogs in mass to bond them together like a pack.
Yeah.
How do you handle that when you get dogs come in? I'm presuming you have to be cautious when you make initial introductions, when you bring a new dog into an established pack.
Sure. I've been doing this for about 8 years now. And, Yeah, I mean, it's the introduction is just trying to find the background of the dog and that type of thing. We have reserved swim times to where if a dog's aggressive or, doesn't have a lot of experience with other dogs, we can do it during reserve time to ease them into it. So we like the group sessions to be, dogs that are already pretty well socialized and get along with other dogs. And of course, we've had, a handful or so of situations that the dog just didn't do well in groups because it's a nerve-wracking thing coming in on a big group of dogs, and it's just this whole new situation. So we try to feel out the dog before we actually get up in there, and because it is a closed area up on the deck where we're starting them out. So, but once they get up there and they see all the other dogs having fun, again, sometimes that goes well for them, and they're like, "Oh, this is fun. This is what all these other dogs are doing." And some of the dogs are just like, "This is too much," and I'm not into this. So we have, like I said, we have reserves times. We have times where there's just a few dogs in there. We call them semi-private times. And, some dogs just do better in those situations. So if we find a dog's not doing well in a group, we can always kind of back off and just, kind of slow it down for them. So,
yeah. Running in effect, like a daycare center, because that's a model that I see developing in different, I see it across the country, different sorts of, modern folks don't want to leave their dogs at home, so they bring them to daycare, just like taking your kindergartner to school.
Right.
Okay. And so you have people bringing their dogs in almost like classes, so to speak. I notice that you have different folks working with them, depending on how the structure is. How's the logistics of that? Is it much like a daycare center with kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think our setup is a little different than some of the other traditional daycares. I mean, we're just one big open play scenario for them. We don't kennel them throughout the day. So we like to, make sure they get along with the other dogs first. So we do a behavior assessment with the dogs. We introduce them to different dogs from the daycare, see how they react. As long as we're seeing them, a good personality out of them, we like to start them out on a less busy day, which for us is Saturdays. During the week, we're at anywhere from 40 to 50 dogs. On the weekends, we're around 10, 15 dogs. So on a Saturday, we can see their personality and how they react with a pack situation with a smaller group of dogs. And as long as we're seeing them do well in that situation, then we'll say, okay, well, if you want to bring them in during the week, they can come in during the week. So we start out, a half day during the weekend, less dogs, and just kind of work them up from there. So we're typically always on a wait list. So again, if a dog is not happy in that situation, we're very honest with the owners about that. And just let them know, hey, maybe this just isn't their thing, or maybe this just isn't the right place for them, or different dogs thrive in different scenarios. So we're pretty lucky to where, we've had dogs that have been coming there for 7 years. So, and on a regular basis, sometimes 2-3 times a week, sometimes 5 times a week, if somebody's a nurse and they're working 12-hour shifts and they don't have a chance to get their dogs out and exercise them, it's a good place for them to come and hang out with their friends and exercise and get that mental stimulation, and then go home and they're nice and tired for the parents, and people are excited about that, and they get to just hang out with a nice mellow dog for the night. And so that's a good situation for them.
Yeah. Wear them out, run them into the ground. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we try not to, overdo it for them, but the dogs typically know their limits. And if they want to go lay down for a while, they go lay down, and the dogs just let them be. And then when they want to get up and start partying again, then it's they can come out and start partying again. So, yeah, I think we really didn't have, I opened this place with my girlfriend, Heather, and, we really didn't know much about dogs or dog daycare or anything like that. We just thought a dog pool would be fun. And we soon realized that just a dog pool was not going to work out financially. So we needed something to supplement that, which, okay, we'll do a daycare. And so then we brought on hired some people who had experience in that regard and kind of worked it up from there. But, we went around to some different daycares and saw the dynamic of the different daycares and basically just went around and said, okay, this is what we don't want. So then we kind of made this what we wanted, what we thought the dogs would be having fun doing. And I'm pretty happy with the way, things turned out with it. So,
well, it's a wonderful business model. Yeah. I mean, you think about all the things a person can do with their life, and it's kind of a neat gig.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is. It's different. It's, like I say, it's different every day. And that's, I guess, what makes it fun, But I don't think you could have done this 20 years ago. Like, who is going to take their dog into a swim lesson at a dog pool 20 years ago? Or, when I was growing up, we didn't get out and walk our dog every day. It was just hung around the house and got to run around the yard and that type of thing. But it's nothing like, people are treating their dogs different today than they used to, for sure. So,
yeah. And it is true, because it's probably been 20 years that model is kind of developed, because you do see it now in different urban centers.
Yeah.
And it addresses a critical need for folks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some dogs, I think, like I say, would be happy sitting around their house all day and wait for their owners to come home. Other dogs, if their parents leave their dog home and their dog just sits around all day, when the owners get home, I mean, the dog's just raring to go. And if you just got off a 10-hour day, maybe you didn't want to go out and run your dog. Well, this is a good situation for him to be in. Yeah.
Well, we met, gosh, it's been how long ago? Probably,
I think about 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was doing aversion work at your place, and we were rolling dogs in. And, I'm always kind of on the lookout for folks that would make good trainers, good aversion trainers. And I thought, well, here's a guy that he's obviously connecting well with dogs. He's seeing a lot of different breeds of dogs. And you're formerly a snowboard instructor. Mm-hmm. So I figured, okay, this is a crazy guy is going to come flying down a mountain on a piece of wood, right? So he might be foolish enough to keep rattlesnakes. And so I worked with you, and we kind of showed you how that worked, and you've really done well. So you are doing trainings, and I know that's a big learning curve.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's something that's needed in Salt Lake. It's, there's only one of me, and I can't be everywhere.
Right.
And how has that worked out for you?
It's been crazy for me, honestly. I've gone through, a lot of emotions with it. And it's a weird thing to say, but I feel like, if you would have told me 8-10 years ago I was going to be doing this, I'd just call you crazy. I mean, I literally grew up scared of snakes, but I almost feel like I somehow am the perfect person for this type of job, because I feel like I do have a connection with dogs. I feel like I can read dogs really well. And then the snake side of things, it took me a while to come around to it, but I feel like, again, it's just, I don't know how it happened, but, I feel connections with my snakes. So I think to find somebody who is, has that connection and stuff with the dogs and can read dogs and also can, treat the snakes well and, deal with rattlesnakes closely like we do, I think takes a special kind of person. And I'm not trying to like toot my own horn here, but I just think it's like, because I'm in the same position as you, I'm thinking like, eventually it'd be nice to get somebody else in to do this, because, I'm so busy. I'm working myself to the bone, really. And my snakes are working to the bone all summer. So I almost feel like there is someone else I'd like to, eventually get in doing this with me. And it's hard to find somebody who would like work with snakes and want to work with dogs, so. But it's a crazy thing. It's been great. I feel like I really hit my stride about 3 years ago. But it's also, when you feel like you hit your stride, then, everything's going really well for 2 weeks in a row. You're like, man, this is really easy. I must be really doing great. And then all of a sudden you just hit a bunch of dogs and is like, why is this not working out for these dogs? So you got to figure that thing out. And it's been a ride, and it's been fun, actually.
Yeah. And I know that, most folks have again, I'm not a snake guy, I'm a dog guy, but they are not unsentient beings. I mean, they have personalities, temperaments. I think they can hold a grudge.
Yeah,
for
sure.
Yeah.
It's funny because, I feel like people don't really know that about snakes. Like, oh, they have personalities? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm taken by, folks when I'm working with them, because it's just, maybe it's just a genetic revulsion that we humans have to snakes. I mean, it's across the board.
Oh, yeah.
And it's generational. For eons, our kindred species has been checking the ground to make sure we're not going to step on something.
Right.
But they perceive a defense posture on a snake as a snake being angry, and it's not angry; it's afraid.
Right.
Yeah.
And I always try to let people know that ahead of time. I've never heard of a story of a snake slithering after somebody to go bite them. They really just want to be left alone. So
right.
But it's funny to see. I mean, there's people who are taking Xanax before they come to those trainings. They're so scared of the snakes, And I always tell people, you don't need to get anywhere close enough to it to where you got to worry about anything. But still, it's your people are walking in on the snake, and you're saying, hey, move to the left a little bit more. Hey, move to the left, move to the left, move to the left. And they're, all they can do is just think about that snake, and their brains just shut off. They're just so scared of the snakes. But
right.
But the good thing is too, there's a number of things I think that come out of this class that are really cool. And one of them is people come into this class very scared of rattlesnakes, and a lot of them leave feeling a lot better about them. So I think that's one positive of the training.
Yeah, and in the state of Utah, there is rattlesnakes are completely protected.
Correct.
And there is a substantial permitting process to be able to possess a rattlesnake.
Right.
Okay. And I know you did the dance as I did initially. But one of the requirements is that if they are going to allow you to have that education permit, that you have to educate people about snakes. And that's one of, I think, the big benefits is that once someone has gone through a training with one of us, then they realize it's not going to chase me. It's not going to, they develop an entirely different perspective on what it takes to live in a world with snakes.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I literally, again, I grew up thinking that the snake was just going to pop out of a bush and bite me. I was always on the lookout for rattlesnakes everywhere. And now I realize it's just, if you're walking, there's one sitting in a bush and you're walking by them, they're happy that you're just walking by them.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's a huge ordeal here in our area up in the foothills. There's a ton of rattlesnakes. And with the population increase, the construction that's going on, more and more people are seeing more and more rattlesnakes. And so I feel great about the training. I mean, I trained, more dogs than I ever have this year. I trained about 500 dogs this year. And, I'm excited to send those dogs out in the field and know that they're good to go, knowing that I don't really have to worry about them, sticking their face right up on a snake and getting bit. Because I don't know what the statistics are around here, but there are quite a few dogs being bit around here. So,
yeah. Now, I traveled for quite a while traveling right now. So I've worked different states. And for a time, I worked corporate through a couple of the collar companies where I was traveling with Rattlesnakes and doing presentations, at different sportsman's expos, grand openings, that sort of thing. So I've had the experience of having to navigate the logistics of state statute,
right.
to get from point A to point B and have to go through 3 states to get there. You're working predominantly now just in Utah, or you've been doing a little bit of work?
A little bit of work in Wyoming. I guess the nice thing about what's going on with my business is I'm getting people traveling 6-8 hours from whether it's Wyoming or Montana or Nevada or Colorado. So I've left the option open for me to travel, but luckily I'm just so busy here and people are willing to travel here. I haven't had to do too much, traveling like you have, which I think is a good thing.
It is a good thing. Yeah. It's to be avoided at all costs. Yeah. You don't want road stories about you and the kids on the road.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Most people just sneak dogs into their motel rooms, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's been a good fit. So you have the daycare and the swimming and you can do the immersion work as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had mentioned your Bracco earlier.
Spinoni.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. We were talking about it. And that was another conversation.
Exactly.
All right. But you are doing a little bit of work with that dog and looking at sort of the gun dog side of things. And there's so much to learn in the dog world. So many different interest groups. Yeah.
And only so much time in the day. That's the hard part.
Yeah. Hate when that happens.
Yeah. He's a great dog. And I really feel like with him, I've kind of found my breed. I really attracted to his personality, and he's just a big goofball, but really agile, fun to see him running around and swimming and stuff. And we'll see. Yeah, after our conversation a little bit, he was a little gun shy, and so I'm excited to maybe get out there and work on some of those tips that you were giving me about trying to get him out of that. So
yeah, gun shy can be fixed.
Yeah.
It's often a man-made thing.
Right.
Yeah, and it's helpful if you can see the genesis of when it happened, so you kind of know how to address it.
Right.
Yeah. Now you live in a place where you've got the mountain slope right beside you, and so you have the option here of getting a dog up into wild country and running them and letting them out into a pretty big world.
Yeah.
And you have how many dogs at this point?
2.
2 of your own. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you still have your poodle pointer?
Yeah, the poodle pointer Brandy. Yeah.
Okay. She must be getting a little bit old at this point.
Yeah, she's about 10-ish. So, and she's got some arthritis going on. So our walks are a little shorter than they used to be these days. But yeah, she loves getting up in the mountains, and we have a cabin up in Wyoming, and she loves running around up there. And really in Salt Lake here, we're starting to get kind of limited on, because we got a few watersheds right by us, and it's hard to get up in the canyons around here.
And you meaning that there are local laws prohibiting running dogs loose in the watersheds?
Yeah, right up near my house anyway. I mean, there's a whole world out there beyond us. But yeah, as far as, our local canyons, a lot of them are watersheds. So, but yeah, up in Wyoming, there's a, endless amount of land up there to run them on. So,
yeah. Yeah, Wyoming is a pretty place, wide open. And I've worked in Wyoming a bit. And I used to work, when I was working in Denver, I would go north to Cheyenne. And there was a facility there where we did a lot of search and rescue dogs. We did a lot of bloodhounds there. They had bloodhound groups. And so Wyoming, breath of fresh air, because Colorado was much like Utah in the beginning, just tough,
Yeah.
in terms of permitting, statute and such. Where Wyoming was...
Yeah, fill out this piece of paper.
Yeah,
2 days later, here it is back to you. You're all set.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I would have to look at where I was going to be. And if I was flying in on an airplane, typically it would go Delta Freight. So I was what's called an identified shipper. And you go through a process, you go through an interview process, and then they come inspect your place, and they make sure you're who you are, because they're going to give you the latitude to put a thing on the plane that hasn't necessarily been inspected completely thoroughly. And there's certain requirements. The snakes have to be contained a certain way and be contained in a mesh bag, see-through bag. They have to be able to inspect them. But they're just assuming that they're probably not going to be as inspected as well as other stuff. That's my take on the deal.
Right.
But I would have to come in through Delta Freight. So if I was working in Wyoming or Nebraska, and I would work a lot at the Sidney Cabela's store when I was corporate stuff, when I was doing presentations and trainings there. And so everything had to clear through Colorado. And if I was driving, I had to come from Arizona through New Mexico, through Colorado, and then head up into Nebraska or Wyoming. And New Mexico, I'd have to call a gal in the basement in Santa Fe, and tell her where I was entering the state and where I was exiting the state. And I could travel along the interstate. I could, if I had to get gas or use the restroom or buy a meal, I could do that, but I couldn't leave the interstate. And, basically what they're saying is the sun don't set on you in our state.
Right,
you enter and you leave.
Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. And, it was always the dance. So I had to do, Cabela's grand opening in Buda, Texas, which is just south of Austin. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, what is Texas going to do to me? Right. So part of it, the process is even just finding the person you have to talk to.
Right.
Okay. Because there's one permitting specialist typically, that in the bowels of some agency building. Right. You're shaking your head.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm calling, and the Department of Agriculture, the state veterinarian's office, and I'm trying, okay, who do I need to talk to about a permit to get a rattlesnake in Texas? So finally, their Division of Wildlife, I get through to this gal, and I call, I introduce myself, woman answers, I introduce myself, and I explain, right? And she's very patient. She's listening to me, and there's this long silence. And she says, now, hon, let me understand this. You're asking me if you need a permit to have a rattlesnake in Texas?
I think there's a more population of lions in Texas than there are in, certain countries in Africa.
Yeah. I
don't think they care too much.
Yeah. Texas was pretty wide open.
Yeah.
Well, it's just different situations in different places and different customs. And I know I worked in Denver for multiple years, maybe 5 years. And initially I had gone there to do some presentations, and it might have even been corporate work early on, snake training presentations at the International Sportsman's Expo, where we literally in the big, the sport dog arena, they called it, we go in and, a couple hundred people, and we do these snake aversion presentations. And they allowed me to bring the snakes in because I was working at these things. And so we kind of pushed it and developed a relationship with the permitting agent there. I was able to set up trainings, and I did quite a bit of work in Denver. And they have a place called the Rock Pile at the airport, which is where they train search and rescue dogs to find people in collapsed buildings.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah. There, and I worked, did a fair amount of work at, there's a a fire department training center in Boulder. Would work there as well. I trained all, the dogs that went to 9/11, before 9/11. And I had set up a training. I was coming out. I had a bunch of dogs already scheduled, and it was south of Denver. And about a month ahead of time, I did my courtesy call to my permitting person and say, hey, I'm coming in, and this is when, so I'm going to tell them, but come to find out she's on maternity leave. And there's a new person at her desk, another gal. And she says, oh, no, you can't. No, you have to have a permit for that. I can't. I said, well.
That's why I'm calling you.
That's why. I said, well, what does that entail? And she says, you got, look up this form and that sort of thing. And what she wanted me to fill out the permit I needed, the form that I needed to get approved through her was a commercial wildlife park application. And it was basically an application to have a zoo. Mm. Okay. And the first three lines are, the questions are, you must have approval. And it wasn't really, it was a check the box off. They weren't asking you for anything, any information. They were just telling you what had to be. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the box said you must have the approval of every municipal, county, state, and federal agency in the jurisdiction that you're. And it's, it's basically it was a, CYA kind of question because they're covering themselves and they're leaving you out in the wilderness.
Right.
Okay. And I told her, I said, I can't sign that. I can't check that box and sign this form. There is no way that I can go to every.
Yeah.
And, she said, well, that's, and I said, if that's the case and you're going to push this, I said, I'll cancel and I'll never train in your state again. And she wouldn't back off. And I went to the organizer, the gal that was the facility that we're going to do the trainings. And I asked her if she could get in contact with maybe a county supervisor or official, see if they could have any leverage, and, no.
No go.
No. And I still get calls from time to time. Mm. And, pleading me to come back that, they got a group here, a group there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm sure it was different back then for you. It seems to be now that there's a lot of other people doing this out there. Whether they're doing it right or not, I try not to, I'm doing my thing and I kind of focused on that. I will say I've had people come to me who have had their dogs trained from other people, and they've, some dogs have reacted the way they should. Other dogs walked right up, put their nose on my snake, and wanted to pick it up and play with it. So I think, it's tough for people because I think people look up on the internet, okay, rattlesnake aversion or rattlesnake avoidance, that type of thing. And they just assume that the person that they're going to go to is going to do their job the way they should do their job. And like I say, some people I think are doing it right. Other people are not. Some people realize that they're not doing the right thing and they end up, doing their research and that's great. Like I say, some of these guys have had hunting dogs come down from Montana. They've gone to their local hunting club and they have a guy come and he'll hold a snake out in front of the dog and then just crank up the e-collar and just hold the button in for 10 seconds and say, okay, your dog's good to go. And some people are like, great. And other people look at it like, I don't think I want to do this to my dog, So like I say, I think it's a tough situation these days because people are trusting the 15 minutes that they're spending with their dog are good to go. And that's how you're supposed to train your dog to do this. And they expect, their dog to stay away from a rattlesnake from there on out. And like I say, I think, some dogs have a natural aversion to it. And, not to say that 15-minute training worked for them, but maybe they just didn't want anything to do with the rattlesnake before that. And so, I don't know. It's just a tough situation, I think, these days, because I think there's quite a few people out there doing this type of thing.
Yeah. Do you find, because I know that there was difficult here in this state because it's not legal. They didn't have the permit. Yeah.
Well, I don't really look into what other people are doing. But there was a group that traveled around, and would come here and do classes. And, again, I think they were spending, they'd spend a minimal amount of time with the dog, and maybe they'd want them to come back for a refresher the next year or something like that. And, but there's at least, one group, and there's another gal in town who's doing this as well. So,
yeah. Well, same thing in Arizona. There are several different people that do the work. Yeah. Enough said. Well, it is gratifying. I know for me, when I do get, messages and calls saying, "Hey, my dog, XYZ happened," and that happens, quite a bit, and it's all different stories. And to know that you've been able to help.
Yeah.
Snake bite's a horrible thing, just a horrible thing to be avoided at all costs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been, I have daycare dogs that have taken my class. And, one dog recently was out with his owner and a few other people. And, long story short, essentially just let them know, like, hey, something's not right here. Something's not right here. And they looked around, there was a rattlesnake right there. So it was cool to hear that, and I had to hear that from my employees. She didn't even tell me. One of my employees said, "Oh, you got to hear what happened," and, but yeah, no, I obviously love hearing that type of thing, especially the dogs that you see every day.
Right.
They're your friends. Right. So it's cool to hear that.
Right. Yeah. And they're all so different in terms of the way they respond.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had someone in class last night that I had trained a Australian Shepherd for, I believe. And she said that's happened multiple times. They've been on the trail up on the Wasatch front, and the dog just comes right in and gets right in front of mom and will not let her go forward. Pushes her backward.
Yeah.
She tries to go sideways, will not let her go sideways. Pushes her backward. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen that in my classes. And then, I think some people see their dog. I had a woman just about in tears because her dog was doing that to her, like in the class, a few weeks ago, and she couldn't believe, that her dog loved her so much that her dog would do that, and it was really cool to see. But and they are all different, like you say. I had a story recently. A woman had taken my class because her friend had taken my class last year. Was out on the trail this year with her dog, and they were walking along, and all of a sudden the dog just ran back and just ended up jumping right up into her arms. And she's like sitting there looking at her dog, looked up ahead, and there was a rattlesnake just 15 feet ahead of her. So, yeah. They're all different.
Yeah. I had one gentleman in training, and he was a big guy. And that old adage about people look like their dogs or vice versa.
Right. Okay.
And he was a guy that ran a wood company in Tucson area. And he had set up a wood yard near Benson, which is, rural from Tucson. And it was, several acres. And it was, he did cut down trees and stuff. So he would save all the stacks of lumber and sell Santa Fe building materials for portals, vigas, the rough wood that you would use in the territorial style homes. And of course, snake heaven,
Sure.
And he kind of looked like John Wayne, moved like John Wayne, and he had that sort of swagger and roll when he walked. And he had two mastiffs. One was maybe 130 pounds, the male, and then the smaller female, maybe 110 pounds. And these two mastiffs were his companions, and they lived there on that place and stayed with them, and they patrolled the the grounds and that sort of thing. So we're doing the training, and we go all the way through the introductions. We get to the place where we're doing the final check where we put a snake in the bag and restrict the scent and silence the snake, restrain the tail so it's just scent. Just a little bit of smell coming out of that bag. And I want the dog to come in, get that smell, that little bit, know it's a rattlesnake, let us know, back away. So the dog comes in and hits that scent cue at a distance. And just like John Wayne, he's got a hold of that rope, and because I told him just walk to the snake, and that's what they were going to do. They're going to walk to that snake, so he's got that rope and it goes taut. The dog's backed up and the eyes are out, and the dog just busts sideways and rips the rope right out of his hand and takes off and runs, makes a loop behind him, and then looked like a torpedo because he's sort of standing there and the snake's just in front of him a little ways. And the dog runs in, runs right between his legs, lifts him off the ground like a pony, and carries him away. So it's just...
That's great.
Yeah. It's amazing what dogs will do, and they'll reason that out, and they'll figure out a way to keep mom or dad safe.
Yeah. And it's fun. Yeah, it's fun to see all those different reactions, And that's what keeps it interesting.
Yeah.
And they all learn different. They all learn at different rates, So I used to get frustrated and think maybe it was something that I was doing wrong. But then I just came to realize it's just, they're like people. You have people who, they graduate with straight A's, and other people, slide by. And so it's, and some dogs have a lot of experience with the world. Other dogs, it's a thing with the COVID too. There's a lot of dogs that just haven't gotten out much in the last couple of years. So it's been interesting seeing that dynamic as well. So, yeah.
And, they are like us. I mean, they learn in different ways. Some people are visual learners.
Right.
Some are auditory learners, and so they're just as unique as the people that own them and the snakes we're training them with.
Yeah.
Well, what can I do to help you? Do you want to talk about Barley's and how folks can get a hold of you if they want to get their dog in the pool and get it swimming, or need some work done, or need a daycare?
Yeah. We're always, we're always happy to work with dogs at Barley's. I mean, we're swimatbarleys.com is a great way to look us up online. And I think, the swimming thing, it can be fun for everybody involved. It's, again, a lot of dogs, they just don't realize they can do it. So people think, oh, my dog's scared of the water. I took him to the lake. We go to the lake all the time, and he just wants to kind of hang out and hang out on the beach. But, with a little bit of work, everybody can be having fun in the water. Here it's just so hot in the summers. It's kind of nice to get up to the lakes and the reservoirs and get out in the water. So, with a little bid of work, we can typically get your dog to come around and like it. So, always happy to work with dogs in that regard, and having dogs come into the daycare as well. As far as my rattlesnake business, I typically run through about mid-May through about, mid to end of September. And my website is rattlesnakealert.com, and can get in touch with me that way. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure visiting. I don't see you enough.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Thanks, Webb.
Yeah. But it's always nice to get up here and reconnect.
Yeah. Good to see you.
It's nice to see you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, with that, we're gonna leave you to your day. Appreciate you spending time talking, hearing us talking and listening to us, and hope you have a lot of fun out there with your dogs, and you get them wet and you get them up on the side of the mountain and running. You have a great day. This is Webb Parton signing off, freerangedogs.com.
If you like this episode, I invite you to visit our website, freerangedogs.com. It's where you can find the stuff you need to live the free-range dog lifestyle. I want to help you with that. Book a consultation call or an in-person training, attend one of our ongoing events, or join our online membership program. We got it all on freerangedogs.com. All right, it's time to head back to the truck and the water bucket for the thirsty dogs. This is Webb Parton signing off, wishing you the boundless joy that comes when you share the outdoors with your best friend.